Picture this. You're sitting on top of a 200 horsepower rocket. The skies, which were perfectly clear like 10 minutes ago, suddenly break open, and it is just pouring.
Oh, yeah, worst nightmare right
Right.
there.
Your visor is fogging up, the asphalt looks like this dark, greasy mirror, and every single painted white line suddenly feels like a patch of black ice.
For motorcyclists, I mean, this is the ultimate test of survival.
It really is, because when you're on a high-performance superbike in the wet, you are balancing on an absolute knife's edge of traction.
Yeah, the margin for error just basically vanishes. And to make it through that storm, it takes a lot more than just a brave face or, a computer microchip. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to explore exactly how riders survive and actually thrive on wet asphalt.
And we're pulling from a huge stack of sources for this deep dive today, right?
We are, yeah. We've got expert crash investigator data, riding school legal blogs, long-term reviews of 399cc track bikes, YouTube street tests, and even raw Reddit community threads.
A really good mix of the data and the real-world rider experience. Exactly. And I can promise you, by the end of this conversation, you'll understand the surprising physics of wet asphalt, why a microchip might be the only thing keeping that bike on the road, and the invisible beginner traps you have to master long before the skies ever open up.
Because that's the thing we often overlook, right? The skills you need for that intense, low-grip rain scenario, they aren't learned in the rain.
No, not at all.
They are built or completely neglected during those crucial first few weeks of riding. You can't master wet grip physics if you don't understand the basic mechanics of your machine.
That's exactly where we need to start. Because before you can talk about, like, dragging a knee on a wet track, you have to survive the parking lot.
Yeah, good luck with that sometimes.
Right. And looking at the sources, there's this massive cognitive trap that catches almost everyone early on. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Oh, it's such a fascinating psychological phenomenon. I mean, it basically dictates that when you know very little about a complex task, you actually lack the knowledge to recognize your own incompetence.
Right. You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. So in motorcycling, a new rider spends maybe 3 weeks in a parking lot. They learn how to shift into second gear without stalling, and suddenly their brain tells them, yeah, I have mastered this machine.
They get this false surge of overconfidence.
They really do. And it completely masks the extreme complexity of what's actually keeping them upright. It leads to super dangerous group rides where peer pressure forces them past their limits.
And skipping out on proper gear, too, right? Like ignoring the whole dress for the slide, not the ride thing. Forgetting ankle-protecting boots or full-face helmets because they just assume they won't crash.
Exactly. And this overconfidence usually leads to a complete breakdown in low-speed mechanics.
I've noticed this. When you watch new riders, they just fight the machine at walking speeds. And looking at our sources, the core of that struggle almost always comes down to the clutch.
Yep, the clutch is everything.
Because people who drive manual transmission cars, they've spent years building this very specific muscle memory where you get off the clutch as fast as possible.
Right, because in a car, if you ride the friction zone, you just burn up that single massive dry disc.
Exactly. So I always think of a car's clutch like an on-off light switch.
Yeah.
But a motorcycle transmission is a completely different mechanical paradigm, right? It's more like a dimmer switch.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy because almost all modern motorcycles use a wet clutch. So instead of one dry disc, you have this stack of alternating friction and steel plates, and they are completely bathed in engine oil.
So the oil acts as a heat sink.
Exactly. It constantly dissipates the friction heat. Slipping the clutch in the friction zone isn't just okay. It is absolutely required for smooth, low-speed balance.
Wait, really? So you're supposed to ride the clutch?
Yeah. At 2 miles per hour, your physical throttle is just way too jerky to control the power delivery. The fuel injection will just snap you forward, so you use that wet dimmer switch to micromodulate the power.
That makes total sense. So when a rider's car-driving muscle memory forces them to just dump the clutch, the bike becomes unstable.
And that leads directly to the most embarrassing rite of passage a new rider can face.
Oh man, the 10,000-pound drop. I was reading the Reddit threads on this, and it is hilarious, but also terrifying. It's when you're rolling up to a red light at like 2 miles per hour, you tap the front brake, and bam.
Yep, straight to the pavement.
The bike instantly feels like it gained 10,000 pounds and just rips you down. Why do new riders struggle so much with this?
It is pure geometry and physics turning against you. See, when you squeeze the front brake, the front forks compress, right? That transfers the weight of the bike and the rider forward over the front tire.
Okay, so the weight shifts forward.
Right. And if your handlebars are perfectly straight, that weight transfers evenly down the center line of the chassis. The suspension just absorbs it.
But if your bars are turned even a little bit right?
Then that massive kinetic energy is transferred off-center.
Right.
The fork compression becomes asymmetrical. Suddenly, the weight of the motorcycle is pushing downward and outward, totally outside of its center of gravity.
And because you're only going 2 miles per hour, you have no gyroscopic stability from the wheels to save you.
Exactly. The bike simply falls over. The golden rule is always straighten the front wheel before the bike comes to a complete halt.
Straighten the bars. It sounds so incredibly simple, yet it catches everyone. And, while we're talking about intersections, there's this evolutionary biology problem we have to deal with in traffic. You are completely invisible to cars.
The invisibility factor is huge. It's known in cognitive psychology as saccadic masking.
The saccadic masking. That's the looked but failed to see error, right?
Yeah, basically the human brain doesn't actually process a continuous video feed of the world. Your eyes dart around in these movements called saccades, and your brain stitches those snapshots together.
So it's filling in the blanks based on what it expects to see.
Exactly. When a driver scans an intersection, their brain is looking for a large rectangular threat with two headlights a car. A narrow vertical silhouette of a motorcycle just gets filtered out as background noise.
That is terrifying. Which means relying on eye contact is essentially a death trap.
It really is.
The sources mentioned a crucial tactic for this. You have to stare at the front tires of the cars around you. They act like a crystal ball for sudden lane changes.
Because long before the chassis shifts, that front wheel will rotate.
Exactly. Oh, and another tactic was about engine braking. If you're using the engine to slow down, your brake light doesn't turn on, so you have to tap your rear brake just enough to flash the light and wake up the unobservant drivers behind you.
You have to force their visual cortex to register a change in the environment, shatter that masking.
Okay, so let's say you master the wet clutch, you avoid the 10,000-pound drop, and you anticipate the invisibility. You survive the beginner phase. The natural next step is chasing performance.
Oh, always.
But jumping straight to a 1,000cc Superbike is a literal death wish. So this is where riders turn to lightweight track weapons to learn advanced dynamics. We saw a ton of discussion about the Kawasaki ZX4RR.
Ah, yes. The ZX4RR. It's a 399cc inline 4 with a screaming 16,000 RPM redline.
16,000 RPM. That sounds insane.
It sounds exactly like a Formula One car, but it notoriously lacks low-end torque. And that is actually the genius of it. It teaches riders momentum because you literally cannot be lazy.
Because if you mess up your entry speed into a corner, you can't just twist the throttle and let the torque save you.
Right. You have to carry your speed, which teaches you incredibly smooth, precise inputs. But it does come with some mechanical quirks.
Yeah, the real-world ownership laws. Like in the U.S., it's heavily detuned, so it requires an ECU flash. And because of those high-frequency vibrations from spinning at 16,000 RPM, it notoriously loosens frame screws.
And valve cover gasket oil leaks from inconsistent factory bolt torque.
Oh yeah, that too. But the one that caught my eye was the quip shifter. Riders were reporting these false neutrals between third and fourth gear.
Yeah, that happens when the ignition cut timing from the factory is slightly mismatched with the mechanical throw of the gearbox. The engine spark comes back on a fraction of a millisecond too early, and it just violently rejects the shift.
Man, the precision there is wild. And naturally, when riders flash the ECU to fix that, they usually upgrade the exhaust. We saw huge debates between the Yoshimura AT2 and the Akrapovic Carbon.
Oh, the exhaust wars.
Right. But I have to push back on this a bit. Is spending hundreds of dollars on an exhaust just a noisy squid move for attention? Like, does it actually do anything for a 400cc bike?
I get why people think that, but it fundamentally changes the handling dynamics. It's all about dropping unsprung weight.
Unsprung weight meaning mass below the suspension springs.
Exactly. Your wheels, brakes, swing arm, and your exhaust. The Yoshimura drops the weight from 16.1 pounds down to just 5.3 pounds.
Wow, that is a massive percentage drop.
And the Akrapovic drops it by over 66% and adds almost 10 horsepower. But crucially, systems like the Yoshimura delete the factory resonator, the bread box, under the bike.
Okay, so you drop 10 plus pounds. Why does that matter so much for the handling?
Because when your tire hits a bump, the shock spring compresses and then has to push that wheel back down to the asphalt. If your exhaust weighs 16 pounds, the spring has to fight all that heavy upward momentum. It's sluggish.
Oh, I see. So dropping the bread box means the spring can reverse the wheel's direction instantly.
Exactly. The tire tracks the road imperfections so much better, it entirely changes the handling profile.
Okay, I stand corrected. It's not just for making noise at stoplights?
Definitely not.
So you have the skills, you've upgraded the lightweight bike, you understand momentum.
Mm.
Eventually, you graduate to a high-performance superbike,
The big leagues.
right? And then you get caught in the pouring rain.
Hmm.
This is where physics takes over. We found some crash investigator data on this, and the numbers are shocking.
Yeah, they really defy common sense.
Because you'd think wet asphalt has zero grip, right?
Hmm.
But the data shows dry asphalt has a coefficient of friction, a COF, of around 0.7. Clean, wet asphalt only drops to 0.5.
Right. A 30% drop, the physical grip is surprisingly high.
So why do so many people crash in the rain if the grip is still there?
It is almost entirely rider panic, specifically locking your elbows and tensing your shoulders.
Because when you do that, you ruin the bike's suspension dynamics, right?
Exactly. You turn your arms into rigid steel bars. Every tiny slide gets transmitted straight into the chassis instead of being absorbed by your body. Riding in the rain is an exercise in smooth, progressive inputs and relaxing your body.
But there is a time when the grip actually is near zero. And that brings us to the first 15 minutes rule.
Ah, the most dangerous time on two wheels.
Right when the rain starts. Because water mixes with the oil, the diesel fuel, and all the road debris baked into the asphalt.
It creates this greasy, rainbow-colored slurry on the surface.
It makes me think of, okay, imagine trying to scrub a hot, greasy frying pan under a cold tap.
Oh, yeah.
It just smears the grease around, right? It's impossible to clean until you let the water really flush it out.
That is a perfect analogy. And that's exactly what happens on the road. You absolutely must pull over and wait 15 minutes for heavy rain to wash that slick layer away.
Just grab a coffee and wait it out.
Exactly. And while you're waiting, you need to sort out your visibility because rain degrades your vision severely.
The Reddit threads were militant about this. You must use anti-fog pin lock inserts in your helmet.
They are non-negotiable.
And ditching tinted visors for clear spares.
Yeah.
Plus wearing proper waterproof leathers, because someone pointed out that water drops feel like literal needles at speed if you have an open face helmet.
Oh, they feel like getting shot with a BB gun. It's awful. And clear vision lets you practice crucial hazard avoidance, like never braking on painted white lines or manhole covers.
Right, because those become actual ice rinks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Knowing the physics is great, but perfectly applying smooth inputs to a 200 horsepower machine in the wet is nearly impossible for a human brain.
Right. In a panic situation, your brain just can't compute it fast enough.
Enter modern electronics. The BMW S1000RR case study was fascinating here.
The S1000RR is basically a supercomputer on two wheels. It features this highly sophisticated rain mode powered by a 6-axis IMU and inertial measurement unit.
So how exactly does it intervene?
Well, first, it drops peak horsepower from 215 down to a slightly less terrifying 180.
It's no massive thing.
Oh, yeah. But the real magic is the throttle. It drastically softens the throttle response in the first 5 to 20% of the turn. So if your hand is jerky, the bike smooths it out.
Oh, wow.
It dials traction control to the absolute maximum, it reduces engine braking, and it activates stoppie control so the rear wheel stays planted if you panic brake.
Okay, but this brings up a massive debate on the internet forums. People claim that rain mode makes a leader bike feel like a docile 600cc beginner bike.
Yeah, I've read those threads. It is totally false.
Totally a myth, right?
Yeah.
Because once the bike is pointed perfectly straight and goes above 8,000 RPM, the computer realizes it has traction.
Yep. It stops restricting the engine and unleashes massive, terrifying power. It is still a 1,000cc superbike.
But the data from riding schools, like Keith Code School, is wild. They noted that students actually had fewer accidents on these 200 horsepower superbikes than on older, raw 600cc bikes that had zero rider aids.
The electronics are just that good at catching human error.
But I have to push back here. Doesn't relying on a microchip breed lazy riders? Like, if the computer saves you every time you get sloppy, do you ever learn to actually respect the throttle?
That's a really valid concern. But you have to view rain mode as a safety net, not an autopilot.
Right, it won't drive for you.
Exactly. It prevents those low-speed slides off an apex, but it absolutely will not save a rider from high-speed target fixation. If you stare at a guardrail and freeze up, the IMU cannot save you.
You still have to do the riding. Well, we've covered an incredible journey today, from mastering that wet dimmer switch clutch and avoiding the 10,000-pound drop in the parking lot,
To shedding weight with an aftermarket exhaust and understanding momentum on a 400cc bike.
And finally, respecting the intense physics of wet asphalt and those lifelines offered by modern rain modes. And whether you are a learner stalling out in a parking lot right now or a veteran on an S1000RR, the road demands the exact same respect.
The laws of physics do not care what you ride.
They really don't. But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. As modern superbikes get faster and their 6-axis IMU computers get smarter, literally calculating grip hundreds of times a second in the pouring rain,
Hmm.
are we approaching an era where the motorcycle is actually a vastly superior rider to the human sitting on it?
Wow, that's a wild thought.
Right. And if the computer is doing all the saving out there, what does that mean for the raw, untamed spirit of motorcycling? Think about that the next time you fire up your bike. Catch you on the next deep dive.